Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. So I've put out my prediction. I've been going on and on about the possible red wave. I've absolutely been feeding into the hype, I'm not gonna lie. And of course, doing that comes with risk. All of a sudden, there's a good chunk of people that are angry with me. And look, I'll take responsibility. I was wrong. Again, just like I was in the 2020 election. It kind of comes with the territory. If you're making predictions, if you're analyzing all of the data and it's bringing you to a conclusion and then you're wrong, you're gonna look bad. It's not gonna age well. And it's especially hard nowadays. It's becoming increasingly hard to rely on polling data because of all of the changes that have happened to the voting system in particular states. Democrats have put themselves in a very favorable position. And look, I know emotions are running high and certain people are angry with me, but at the end of the day, I regret nothing and I will change nothing. I will continue to push conservative ideas that I believe in, and I will continue to hype each and every single election season. What am I supposed to do? Doom and gloom? Change my channel name to Black Pill Politics? Absolutely not. I will continue to remain positive and continue to be a hype man because that is what I want to do. I want to create energy, positive energy, continuing to push forward this grassroots conservative movement. That is what I will continue doing. And even following this election disappointment, yes, it was relatively disappointment because it wasn't as big as people were expecting. I'm not going to sit here and pretend as though all is lost. I mean, people are pretending that the world is ending, that it's game over forever. There is so much positive. And in the end, Republicans won. I mean, Democrats are cheering on Twitter as if they've won the election. They didn't. And even if they win 51 seats in the Senate, which is possible and might happen now with Nevada switching or shifting, even if that's the case with the Senate, the reality is on the House vote, there was a red wave. The numbers that we were looking at, the numbers that we were predicting, maybe they didn't transition into the seat gain that people were hoping for because a couple states were a little bit weird. But at the end of the day, when it comes to the generic vote, Republicans won significantly. Joe Biden's woke socialist agenda is going to be halted. The end result has been achieved, and even some sober minds at CNN are starting to realize and admit that. We're not going to sit here and pretend as if all is lost. A win is a win. Whether you won by 50 points or you won by 2, a win is still a win. And so let's continue to focus on the positive here. We've got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, friends, so let's focus on the wins. 2018 to 2022, Nancy Pelosi's House of Representatives has been a total disaster. We've had to suffer through her sham January 6th garbage commission. Well, that's over. And on top of that, Democrats have had total control of Washington, and they've passed nearly $10 trillion in reckless spending over the last 2 years. That is over. So when Democrats are cheering on Twitter, poking at you with their sarcastic comments, oh, where's the red wave, MAGA chud? What are they celebrating? Because CNN certainly doesn't seem to be celebrating.
Of course, yeah, but I don't think those. I'd be for marijuana because when they prosecute people for marijuana, it's racially biased. We know that. That's a very good reason to legalize it. What I worry about, of course, if the Republicans take over, whether it's by a small margin or a large margin, that they are, first of all, we're not going to be able to pass anything. Secondly, there will be hearings. There'll be investigations. They'll investigate Hunter Biden. It'll be very toxic. Marjorie Taylor Greene and those people will want to impeach Biden. I worry about it just being very, very ugly. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure that's pretty predictable.
Look, the 2020 election was very frustrating, very emotional. At one point, people got over it and they started moving to the next thing. At one point, you got to come to terms with reality and you got to work with what you got. Well, Republicans now control the House of Representatives, meaning it's time for investigations, it's time for committees, it's time for accountability. You don't even need the Senate to do any of that. The House of Representatives has been weaponized against conservatives for the past 4 years. Flipping the House was the most important endgame goal here, and that's exactly what happened. And to say that there was no red wave, I think, is totally unfair. As of right now, look at the results. Generic national House vote. Republicans won 51.8% of votes, Democrats won 46.2%. That is 5.5 million more votes for Republicans than it is for Democrats. You know, that's the number that we've been focused on the most. The Senate races, are the most risky. At the end of the day, there's a lot of people who have very weird voting habits. There's people who want to split power. Like in 2018, for instance, Democrats were hoping for this massive blue wave. They won the House, but they didn't win the Senate. Republicans retained the Senate in that race. At the end of the day, there's a lot of good here. Republicans made amazing gains with Hispanic voters, for instance. That's a big W. Another win is new voters. Looking at the exit poll data for first-time voters, 12% said this was their first time they had ever voted in a midterm. They voted 53% for Republicans and 45% for Democrats, meaning there is a significant enthusiasm gap when it comes to registering new voters or getting people to the polls for the first time ever. Those people are voting for Republicans. Maybe there wasn't a red wave in Pennsylvania. The state shifted left. And it's not even necessarily Philadelphia. There's a lot of people that are targeting Philadelphia specifically as being the reason John Fetterman won the state. But if you look at the map in total, almost every single county, including rural working class counties, shifted left. Mehmet Oz did not appeal to the Trump base in Pennsylvania. And so there was no red wave in PA. But there was a red wave in New York State. We're going to pretend like it's all doom and gloom when Lee Zeldin was competitive in the governor's race in New York State. Kathy Hochul with 52.5% of the vote, Lee Zeldin with 47.1%. Republicans flipped House seats. Lee Zeldin won counties that Republicans haven't won for decades. Quickly going back to Florida, red wave sweeps in supermajorities in Florida legislature. In the end, Democrats in the Florida legislature didn't even come close. Republicans secured not only a solid majority in the Florida House of Representatives and the Florida Senate on Tuesday, they won a supermajority in both chambers. And that gives GOP leaders unfettered control of the legislative process with the largest supermajorities in decades. Certain Senate races sucked. Dr. Oz lost to a zombie. Okay, it happened. It sucks. We don't know why it happened. It could be that he was a bad candidate. It could be fortification. It could be the GOP establishment not spending money effectively enough and not targeting the right races. It could be the lack of Donald Trump's presence, not pulling the working class vote in Pennsylvania rural areas. It sucks, but it happened. But I guess what I'm trying to say here is that I think it's unfair to categorize this election as a total failure when in the generic national House vote, Republicans led by 5 points. There's a lot to work with here. Republicans performed admirably with new voters, with Hispanic voters, with women voters. The question is, where do you focus now? Based on the exit poll data that we have, Republicans underperformed with independents. Why is that the case? Republicans underperformed in working class rural areas in the Rust Belt. Why is that the case? Republicans overperformed in Nevada, in Florida, even in Wisconsin. Ron Johnson did incredibly well. The state shifted right. Maybe not in the governor's race, but in the Senate race, Wisconsin shifted rightward. And I mean, New York, just look at this. A massive rightward shift in New York that almost made the state competitive. Even Joe Pinion did pretty well against Chuck Schumer. There's a lot to analyze here. There's a lot to celebrate, frankly. And at the end of the day, the number one mission, the most important goal, the end game, was to stop Joe Biden's legislative disaster from continuing. And that goal was achieved. It wasn't the glorious battle victory that people were hoping for, with the roars and the celebrations in the end, planting that flag in the ground, but it was still a win nonetheless. And there's a lot to work with here. We didn't get it right. I didn't get it right. I was wrong. Frankly, everyone was wrong. Democrats, independents, election experts, polling institutions. The Real Clear Politics average was predicting 54 seats in the Senate for Republicans at one point. The betting odds were all predicting the same thing. I and everybody else who got this election wrong were just following the data. The data once again failed us. But the way I think about it, the way I always think about it, is not to point fingers and to blame Donald Trump and cause infighting, an in-party mutiny, unless that mutiny is targeted towards Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy. It's not to complain and to whine and argue. It's to keep pushing this message, to keep playing my hype man role, to keep fighting for ideals that are important to me, and to figure out how to get that message to land with independents and to land with common sense, regular folk. And so that is exactly what I'm going to keep doing. I'm not going to feed into the doomer culture, because if everyone did that, then after 2020, no one would even show up to vote. You know, the saying goes, Rome wasn't conquered in one day. You don't give up on the war because you lost one battle. Maybe 2022 wasn't the red tsunami we were looking for, but the goal is now to immediately disregard that and focus on how you can make 2024 that massive red tidal wave tsunami. And that is exactly what I'm going to keep doing, and hopefully I'm not the only one. That's what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. I'm going to get out of here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.